An I-RRR is an industry rent to revenue ratio. This is the percentage of rent that tenants are paying relative to their revenue. Some of you for the first time are seeing the I-RRRs. Here they are. Now these are just some of the random national I-RRRs, but did you know that scientific research and development services, which come from the NACE, SIC of 5417, pay 5.07% of their revenue to base rent? Did you know that? Boom. Let's look at another one. Did you know that administrative management and general management consulting services pay 5.38% of their top line? So if you go to our website, office, retail, industrial, not nationally, but by your market, are at our website. So if you come from San Diego, you come from Greenville, South Carolina, you come from Denver, Colorado, you come from Madison, Wisconsin, you can find out what are attorneys paying relative rent to revenue, and we have published the I-RRRs. Now, this is an important tool because you bring the two S's to your interview with your tenant and you say, we want the right to represent you. Our research tells us that plus or minus you should be paying about 5.5% of your revenue to base rent. Hopefully you've had that discussion with anyone else that you've visited with about representing you. They say, well, one of your competitors came in, but they didn't mention anything about that. And you smile and say, well, you should be having that discussion because you don't want to put too much rent on your P&L, which is the number one mistake made by tenant rep brokers, is negotiating a market lease that has nothing to do with what you can afford. We want to get into the third leg of the stool for good tenant representation, which is process. Now, since the beginning of time, tenant rep brokers are doing a fabulous job evaluating the subjective differences from one building to the other. You'd go to one building and it's got fast elevators and it's got 5-foot mullions and it's got a Starbucks on the ground floor, and you start scoring things 4 and 5. And so you would start comparing the subjective qualities of 3 different buildings. But one of the deficiencies that we've been having is also doing an economic comparison, but not one building to the other, but to you. So now what we've done is we've taken this 5-year lease that you want to enter into, all right? You've been kind enough to share with us that you're going to do $5 million. You are in a peer group that your peers are paying 4.3% of their top line to base rent. Before I put you in my car and start showing you buildings, I'm going to say you're an adult. You're going to do a lease that works best for you. But my job is to at least give you a forecast of what is good financial health for you and your business. So all I'm sharing with you right now is for this year, you want to be paying around $215,000 in base rent. Next year, with escalations, you don't want to pay much more than $232,000. One of the single biggest mistakes made by tenant rep brokers, and they're not even aware that they're doing it, is they have negotiated a 5-year lease with a landlord that the rent is escalating faster than top line. It's like a negative amortizing mortgage. And it's amazing that they negotiate, never having done the math, give me the conservative growth rate of your revenue, and based upon the terms of the lease I've just negotiated with pass-throughs, I've just screwed you. Because in the third year, you're starting off with a 4.3 I-RRR, but because I'm a nitwit, it's going to be 4.5, 4.8. By the time you get through this lease, you'll be paying 5.5% or 1 full percentage point more than your competitors because I'm not that good with math. And I got to tell you, it happens all the time that tenant reps negotiate a lease thinking today, never having done the forecast of does rent and pass-throughs grow faster than your revenue. That's why before I put them in the car, I want to do the forecast, then get the proposal from the landlord, do the math on the proposal to make sure I've put some sort of ceiling, because if not, 4.3 becomes 4.5, becomes 4.7, becomes 5.1. I'm just getting started. Can y'all sense that? Can you just sense? I think he's getting ready to lose his mind in just a minute. He's like he's building up to something, right? You want to win more tenant rep assignments, and the way we win more tenant rep assignments is by bringing best practices to the prospect that's not being brought by a competitor. In every presentation that you make, tenant rep, property management, investment sale, landlord rep, you should always bring 5 high hurdles into that presentation. Here's an example of a high hurdle. A high hurdle is something that your competition can't overcome. Fred, we want this assignment. We want the right to represent you. Whoever you hire, please make sure before you start looking at buildings, they have given you a forecast of what is good financial health for you and your business. Please make sure they have given you an economic plan that does no harm to your P&L. Because in today's market where we've got a full-blown recovery, landlords have more pricing power than they did 2 or 3 years ago. And what oftentimes happens is we inadvertently negotiate a good market lease which you cannot afford. So what we want to do is, you're still going to make the decision on where you want to go, but our job is to give you the forecast of what is good financial health relative to rent, and then you make the final decision where you want to go. That's a high hurdle for a competitor. And whoever you hire, and again, we hope it's us, please make sure they give you a forecast also of what is good financial health for you. Knowing that tenant rep brokers are going to come in here, and this is how their tenant rep presentation goes. I want to tell you about the deals I've been working on. I'm a good tenant rep now. It doesn't cost you anything. Landlord pays for it, and I'm a killer. Matter of fact, when I call the landlords, they shake in their boots because I'm not a very nice guy. And my job is to bring the heart, still beating, still warm, back to you. That's what I do as a good tenant rep. Really. No, what you're supposed to do is give me a forecast based upon my peer group and the revenue that I've forecasted, what kind of lease I should negotiate. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it, that you're sitting there measuring mullions and not giving me a forecast of how much rent I should be paying next year. When you really think about it, it's crazy that you're telling me about the speed of the elevator, but you're not telling me that I'm about ready to go upside down in the lease because the escalations are growing faster than my revenue. We're missing the big picture. That's what's wacky about tenant rep. For 40 years at least, the International Council of Shopping Center and Urban Land has been publishing Dollars and Cents. They'll give you the book at the convention. You go there and you look up restaurants and it says 6%. There's no retailer that would do a lease that does not see the relationship between sales and rent. But office and industrial tenants, they've not been using that same best practice used by retailers. They just negotiate a market lease. And then they realize they're paying too much and they call the tenant rep and saying, we want to sublet some of our space. It's not that they have too much space, they've got too much what? Rent. The model that I'm showing you is the same model a retailer has been using since the beginning of time. The real estate industry, retail does have a standard. It's been published for decades called Dollars and Cents. It says if you're a big box, pay less than 1% of sales to rent. If you're a jewelry store in the finest suburban mall in town, you should be paying 7 or 8%. They've been publishing it for years. Office and industrial, let's go negotiate a market lease. Got a Starbucks on the ground floor, covered parking, plus they'll detail my car. Let's go negotiate. You put a lease on the books, it's twice what you can afford. You want to know why? Because they did not use the same philosophy a retailer uses. A retailer, only with exception, will go into a location that they do not see the relationship between rent and sales. In office and industrial, guess what? We're negotiating leases every single day that are driven by the market instead of driven by the best practice of what is good financial health. Who's representing the developer, the tenant rep or the landlord rep?
Landlord rep.
Who am I representing?
Tenant.
I don't care what the magazine told you had to get.
Yeah.
Who am I representing? Who's bulldog? The tenants. And so you can give me all the magazines you want. They're not paying more than $215,000. So do what you got to do. It's $215,000. So when you get over your magazine article, come back and let's go make a deal. Who am I representing now? The tenant. But I've now got counsel that is of substance, because you're exactly right. The landlord's going to come back and say, based upon
our loan that we have to give,
based on the loan and based on the TI that you want, I need to get this. I'm sympathetic. So go get it from somebody else, because my tenant should not pay more than 4.3%. So here's what I suggest you do. Find a hedge fund. They can go 6%. Go find someone with lots of money that doesn't mind throwing it away. I'm not going to permit my tenant to pay much more than 4 or 5 at the top, because if so, their P&L is in jeopardy. I'm with you. But go find a venture capitalist that can pay all kinds of money for rent. Or go find a high-end law firm or financial service firm, but not my client. There's a number of ways we can get to a present value target. For example, I can take a 60-month lease, make it a 66-month lease, give you 6 months of free rent outside the base term. It lowers the present value to the tenant, but it sustains the face rate for the landlord. Absolutely. And when we get into negotiating, which maybe will be tomorrow afternoon, we'll talk about all of the creative techniques that you can bring to make deals. We're in the business of making deals. But understand, I've met very few killer tenant reps that are sympathetic to the problems of the landlord. They just are not a sympathetic. You find them to be a sympathetic bunch? I mean, this is a hardcore bunch. Just so you understand, in life, if a landlord rep was to play football, they'd be on the offensive side of the ball. What strategy and what play do you want to run? You know what I mean? A tenant rep broker would be a middle linebacker. They're only concerned about one thing. What is it? Killing the guy with the ball. That's a tenant rep. I mean, so I want you to understand, hardcore tenant reps are just not a particularly sympathetic bunch. They are skilled negotiators by nature, by DNA. And so you can sit there and they'll look at you like you've lost your mind. What do I care about what it cost you to build the building? You paid too much to the contractor. You should have had me negotiate the contract with the contractor. That's your problem. But I'm not passing your mistake on to my tenant. Now, you'll see they cool their jets a little bit now because the market's 5% vacant, right? You'll say, well, you make a good case there, and I'll go back to my tenant and see what we can do, and hopefully they'll do it fast because the place could be leased in the next 15 minutes. But, it's a soft market. They're a wild and crazy bunch, aren't they? They are not sympathetic. They're a little bit more so today. But you're right. The one thing we want you to do is be deal makers. There is no advantage by prolonging the negotiation with one exception. Soft market, 16% vacant. The best thing a tenant rep broker could do to negotiate a good deal for lease is never return the call of the landlord. Here's how it goes. Landlord gives you a proposal, right? Tenant rep says, I appreciate the proposal. We'll think about it. A couple days go by. Landlord rep leaves a voicemail for the tenant rep. Hey, I see you haven't gotten back to me. I've talked to my partners. We'll knock off $1 per square foot on the rent. Tenant rep doesn't call back, right? 3 days go by. Landlord rep calls, please, I wish you would call me back. We've decided we're going to give you another 50 cents a square foot in TI. Don't call back. Go on vacation. Another voicemail. Now the pleading begins, the begging. We'd love to have you in this building. We'd love to have you in this building. Their voice gets real high. We'd love to have you in this building. And we give you 2 more parking spaces, right? It's a horrible thing to witness. I mean, when you see it. I mean, if you could save these voicemails, we could sell them for $1 million, the whining landlord reps that are negotiating against voicemail. I mean, it is unbelievable, right? And then finally, after about 6 months, you take the deal. It's the most incredible. You never had one conversation with the landlord rep. They just continued to leave voicemails. We'll make it better, right? Well, that's why, though, in industrial, who does industrial in here? We see so many industrial brokers that are doing landlord rep, tenant rep, and sales. Because to really have a great practice, industrial brokers have great latitude in what they do. So Monday they are doing tenant rep. Tuesday they've got a half dozen listings that tenant reps are coming to them. And then they sell this single purpose building because they understand how to do a lease first owner analysis. And a great industrial broker really is always running sort of a 3-pronged practice. Where a downtown office tenant rep broker in LA, I don't need to do anything but work 6 blocks. I don't even need a car. I mean, it's amazing the number of tenant rep brokers in New York that don't have cars. They get to their assignments by cab and train, But industrial brokers are saying, to me, to make a good living, I'm going to do tenant rep, landlord rep, and sales.